Warriors, welcome back to Gods of Alliance. If you're here, it means you want power, knowledge, and control over the battlefield. This is not luck. This is strategy. Let's break the game together. Today we're taking a closer look at one of the most iconic mages in Hero Wars Alliance. A hero capable of completely changing the flow of a battle with a single ability. A hero who doesn't just deal damage. He controls positioning, creates devastating combos, and turns the enemy's formation into the perfect target. Today we're talking about Lars, the Dominion's legendary Lord of Storms. We'll break down every one of his skills, explain how to build him correctly, cover his skins, glyphs, artifacts, gift of the elements and talismans, and finally, we'll look at some of the best ways to counter him on the battlefield. Because understanding Lars isn't just about understanding one hero. It's about understanding one of the strongest control mechanics Hero Wars has ever introduced. So let's begin. Everything starts with his first ability, Lord of the Storm. Lars summons a powerful storm directly on the enemy backline, pulling nearby enemies into its center while dealing magic damage both when the storm appears and again when it disappears. Every enemy caught inside also receives a mark of water, and this ability scales entirely with Lars' magic attack. Now, this is much more than a simple damage skill. The real strength comes from repositioning the enemy team. Heroes that normally stay protected in the backline suddenly become grouped together, making them perfect targets for area control and devastating follow-up attacks. Jorgen can immediately stop their energy generation with Torment of Powerlessness. Arachne can paralyze multiple heroes at once. Mushy and Shroom can spread silence across an entire group instead of only a few targets. But perhaps the most famous combination of all is still with Lars' sister, Krista. If Krista places frozen needles before Lars casts his ultimate, every enemy dragged across that frozen ground receives additional damage from the ice spikes. Instead of simply pulling enemies together, Lars drags them across a deadly battlefield prepared by his sister. It's one of the oldest combinations in Hero Wars, and it's still one of the most satisfying to watch. Next comes Chain Lightning. Lars releases an electrical charge that jumps from one enemy to another, damaging every target it touches. Like his first ability, this skill also scales with magic attack. Although it may seem straightforward, it's surprisingly effective at cleaning up weakened enemies across the battlefield. Rather than focusing on a single target, Lars spreads pressure across the entire enemy team, making it much harder for opponents to stabilize after taking heavy damage. And when Krista is standing beside him, constantly protecting the front line and controlling enemy movement, Lars has more opportunities to continue casting and building pressure throughout the fight. His third ability is Lightning Bolt. Lars strikes the nearest enemy with a powerful bolt of lightning, dealing magic damage and stunning the target for 4 seconds. Enemies carrying a mark of water are always prioritized. This is where Lars becomes a true control hero. 4 seconds is an incredibly long stun, capable of interrupting dangerous ultimates, stopping key supports, or simply removing an important hero from the fight long enough for your team to take control. Because marks of water are constantly being applied through his ultimate, Lightning Bolt almost always finds the targets Lars wants to eliminate first, and that creates an incredibly smooth rotation between all of his abilities. Finally, we arrive at Conductance. This passive ties his entire kit together. Whenever Lars attacks an enemy carrying a mark of water, he deals additional damage while also extending the duration of his stuns. That means every mark of water becomes even more valuable. More damage, longer control, and even more opportunities for your team to dominate the battlefield. Krista benefits enormously from these marks. Judge can continue chaining control effects with Ion Cyclone. Polaris can extend the disruption even further using Pulsing Comet. Together, they create a continuous cycle of crowd control where the enemy struggles to recover before the next ability lands. And that's exactly why Lars has remained relevant for so many years. He isn't simply a damage dealer. He's the hero that creates opportunities for everyone else. Now that we understand how Lars works, let's build him correctly. Lars is a mage from the Way of Chaos faction and fights from the backline. That means our priorities are very clear. Increase his damage. improve his penetration, and keep him alive long enough to keep casting storms. Starting with his skins, Lars currently has 6 of them. His default skin: Magic Attack, Magic Penetration, Armor. A second Magic Attack skin with a Skin Plus version, and Health. The very first priority should always be the Magic Attack skin with the Skin Plus version. Every point of Magic Attack directly improves Lord of the Storm, Chain Lightning, and Lightning Bolt, allowing Lars to hit significantly harder from the very beginning. Next comes Magic Penetration. There's no point dealing massive magic damage if the enemy simply resists it. Magic Penetration allows Lars to cut through heavily protected heroes and maintain his offensive pressure against tougher teams. Third comes Health. Lars isn't naturally durable, so increasing his survivability gives him more time to cast additional ultimates and continue controlling the battlefield. After that, upgrade his second Magic Attack skin to further increase the scaling of all his offensive abilities. Then comes the default skin, which adds intelligence, increasing both his Magic Attack and Magic Defense. Finally, Armor becomes your last priority. It's still valuable against physical teams, but compared to Lars's offensive needs, it provides the smallest overall improvement. And if Lars ever receives another Health or Magic Penetration skin in the future, that immediately becomes one of your highest priorities. Now let's move on to Lars's Glyphs. His 5 glyphs are Magic Attack, Health, Magic Defense, Magic Penetration, and Intelligence. The first one you should prioritize is Magic Penetration. Lars is built around dealing explosive magic damage, but none of that matters if enemies can simply resist it. Increasing his Magic Penetration early allows him to bypass defensive heroes and maximize every one of his abilities. Next comes Health. Lars is a backline mage, but that doesn't mean he's untouchable. Assassins, splash damage, and dive compositions can eliminate him surprisingly quickly. More health gives him the extra survivability needed to cast additional ultimates and keep controlling the battlefield. Third is Magic Attack. This directly increases the damage of Lord of the Storm, Chain Lightning, and Lightning Bolt, making every rotation significantly more threatening. After that comes Magic Defense. While Lars naturally gains Magic Defense through intelligence, adding even more protection helps him survive against heavy magic teams and gives him extra time to react during difficult fights. Finally, invest in Intelligence. It's still an important glyph because it increases both Magic Attack and Magic Defense, but thanks to Lars already having 2 Magic Attack skins, the direct offensive stats provide a better return early on. One recommendation I continue giving for almost every hero is to raise all glyphs to around level 40 before pushing them further. It gives you a balanced account progression while avoiding unnecessary investment too early unless you're specifically chasing hero classes. Now let's talk about artifacts. Lars' weapon artifact grants the entire team a Magic Penetration bonus every time he casts his ultimate. His book increases both Magic Attack and Magic Penetration, while his ring increases his main stat, Intelligence. The priority here is very straightforward. Start with the book. It gives Lars everything he wants as a damage dealer, increasing both the raw power of his abilities and his ability to bypass enemy magic defense. Second comes the ring. Intelligence strengthens his overall scaling and further improves both his offense and magical durability. Finally, invest in the weapon artifact. Sharing Magic Penetration with your team is extremely valuable, especially in magic-based compositions, but maximizing Lars's own damage first provides the biggest immediate impact. Next comes the Gift of the Elements. My recommendation here is simple. Max it. Lars depends heavily on his stats to perform consistently. Every additional point of intelligence and magic attack increases both his damage and his survivability, allowing him to remain effective throughout longer battles. Now let's move on to his talismans. Lars currently has 2 excellent options. His first talisman provides intelligence and magic attack. It's the premium VIP version and naturally much harder to obtain. His second talisman grants magic attack and armor, making it considerably easier for most players to build. Both talismans perform extremely well. If you have access to the VIP version, it's the stronger long-term investment thanks to the intelligence scaling. But don't underestimate the second one. A properly upgraded Lars using the standard Talisman remains an incredibly dangerous hero. Now comes one of the most important sections of every guide. How do you actually counter Lars? The first thing to understand is that Lars becomes much stronger when he successfully controls enemy positioning. Ironically, this can sometimes work against him. If Lars pulls your entire team directly into Dorian's vampirism aura, every affected hero immediately gains lifesteal, dramatically increasing your team's survivability. Sometimes his own ultimate accidentally helps your team recover. Another excellent counter is Ju. If Lars happens to be the furthest hero on the battlefield, Ju can jump directly onto him and eliminate one of the enemy team's biggest sources of control before the fight truly begins. Jorgen is another fantastic answer. His energy control prevents Lars from activating Lord of the Storm as frequently, delaying his entire rotation and significantly reducing his overall impact. Against heavy magic compositions, Rufus remains one of the safest tanks available. His immunity to lethal magic damage makes Lars struggle to create meaningful pressure, allowing your team to survive long enough to win the fight. Cornelius is another hero Lars players should always respect. Since Lars usually has one of the highest intelligence values on the battlefield, Cornelius's heavy wisdom can deal devastating damage, often removing him before he has the chance to dominate the fight. At the same time, Protective Dome increases your team's magic defense, reducing Lars' overall effectiveness even further. Iris also performs exceptionally well. Every time Lars applies a Mark of Water, Iris activates Mysterious Pact, reducing both his physical and magic attack. The longer the fight continues, the weaker Lars becomes. And finally, there's Phobos, one of the most reliable mage counters in the game. Phobos constantly steals energy from the enemy with the highest magic attack, stuns that same target with paralysis, and then burns even more energy using Mage's Terror. Against Lars, this combination can almost completely shut down his ability rotation before it ever becomes dangerous. So, is Lars still worth investing in? Absolutely. Even after years in Hero Wars Alliance, he remains one of the strongest battlefield controllers available. His ability to reposition enemies, apply marks of water, extend crowd control, and create devastating synergies with heroes like Krista, Judge, and Polaris gives him a unique identity that very few heroes can replace. He's not simply a mage. He's the hero that dictates where the battle happens. Master his positioning, build him correctly, pair him with the right allies, and you'll quickly understand why Lars has remained one of the most respected control heroes in Dominion. Warriors, this is how we play the game. Not randomly, not blindly, with knowledge, with precision, with control. We don't build randomly. We build with intention. Master the mechanics. Control the fight. Let's break the game together.